My wife is awesome. Is she not?
She is.
I got to butter up because I got a lot of stories about her this morning. I'll hear about it later. I'm just curious, before we dive in here, how many already have your Christmas decorations up on your house? Anybody? No? No trees, no Christmas trees, nothing like that? No? No, you normally do, but not this year. How many are like, no, it's way too early for Christmas decor? It's too early. Yeah, I see that hand. God bless you. God bless you. God bless you. Hallelujah. Yeah. So if it were up to my wife, we would have decor up in March for December, for leading up for the. We put our tree up last night, and it's mainly because I want to remain married, because I don't think it should be up yet, but it is up right now, and it was a joyous time with our kids who fought the whole time, broke ornaments. The tree fell over, I think, at least once. All the lights were. No, I'm kidding. It was a joyous occasion in my house last night. Hey, I hope you got a Bible. If you got a Bible, open to the book of Ruth. The book of Ruth. We're in a mini-series, a mini-collection of talks in the book of Ruth. Ruth chapter number 2. I've entitled today's talk, I want to talk to you really from this thought, the invisible hand of the Almighty. Now, I have a subtitle for you today, too, because I couldn't decide, honestly, on the title. And my subtitle is The Greatest Love Story. The Greatest Love Story. Now, I'm not talking about Zach and Kelly from Saved by the Bell. I don't know how many in that generation. I'm not talking about them. I'm not talking about Ross and Rachel from Friends. I'm definitely not talking about Jack and Rose. Dear Lord, why could that woman not scoot over on the plank and give that boy some place to float so he didn't drown in the North Atlantic Ocean there? Why couldn't she do that for him? The greatest love story. Now, we're in a collection in the book of Ruth, making our way through this book. This is an amazing book, a powerful book. If you missed last week, let me catch you up to speed, because this book is a book you got to read. Like, you can sit down and read it in probably 20 minutes. It's worth the read because God has a word specifically for you today. Let me just catch us up to speed. In Ruth chapter 1, we're going to be in Ruth 2 today, but in Ruth chapter 1, we met a family. There was a mom, we had a dad, and we had 2 boys. They were experiencing famine in their land, and so they moved from their land of Bethlehem to a wicked land. Everybody say wicked. Go to a wicked land, a heathen land, a pagan land called Moab. While they're there, the 2 boys, they meet some girls and they get married. Upon so doing, they find themselves outside of the will of God for their life. Bethlehem was the place of blessing, the house of bread, the place God designed for this family. And in so leaving the land of Bethlehem, they find themselves outside the will of God. And upon so doing, what ends up happening is the dad dies. The 2 boys who married Moabite wives, women, they died. Now we are left with the mom. We're left with the mom of the entire family. We're left with 2 daughters-in-law. One of the daughters-in-law goes back home, and the other daughter-in-law says, you know what, Naomi, to the mother-in-law, I'm going to go back with you to your hometown. But here's what ends up happening. Naomi is angry. We left her last week. She is angry. She is bitter. She is resentful towards God. Even in her disobedience, she is saying, God, I don't know why you couldn't snap your finger and get me out of the disaster that I find myself in. She was angry. She's angry at God. Today, as we pick it up in verse 1, she's mad. She's angry at God in her disobedience. Can I ask you today, have you found yourself through a decision, possibly a series of decisions, that have led you outside of the blessing and the will of God and into a land of disobedience? What we see happening is Naomi and Ruth make their way back into Bethlehem. Can I suggest to you today that if you find yourself outside the will of God, it's as easy as you simply turning around and going back to the place of blessing. Go back to the place God was blessing you before. If today you're living in disobedience, if today you are living in a famine land, if today you find yourself outside the will of God, turn around and go back. You're experiencing death, destruction, spiritually, emotionally, physically. Go back to the place God had for you. And what we're going to see today through this greatest love story is that we serve a God who is the great pursuer. That in our disobedience, that in our rebellion, that though we may fail, though we may walk away from the place of blessing, though we may walk away, God goes to great lengths to pursue you. And we're going to see this represented in a marvelous, romantic, amazing love story. And it reminds me dearly of my time dating. Now, I was not, you got to know this about your pastor, I was not the smoothest of guys. I wasn't suave. I wasn't eloquent in my speech. I was a poor kid, didn't have any money. So if I was going to take you out on a date, I was going to have to bum money from my mom, and I didn't even drive. I didn't have a car. Until I was in college. So I was like, if you want to go on a date with me, we're probably going to have to walk. So what do you say? You want to go to the movies with me? It was just like a terrible situation. So when I start dating my lovely bride, my beautiful, amazing bride, I had no car, I had no money, and I remember our first date. Babe, do you remember our first date? Where's our first date at? Where's our first date? Steak and Shake. Our first date was in Steak and Shake. Now, I couldn't afford Steak and Shake. I didn't have a car, but it was right around the corner from my house. I was like, Britannica, would you like to go to Steak and Shake? We'll go and we'll just enjoy some burgers, and it's going to be awesome. You want to go there? She's agreed. So I had to bum money off of her mom. I was like, hey, Mrs. Chesser. I'm not kidding you. She was in town, and I was like, Mrs. Chesser, can I borrow $25 just to take your daughter out? She gave me $20. She actually gave me $50. And we take off in my amazing shoes. We walk to Steak and Shake right around the corner. And it's an amazing time. We're enjoying conversation. We're getting to know each other. This is our first date. Remember the whole thing. Now, after the date was over, we had burgers, we had fries, we had shake. It was amazing, beautiful. But remember, I'm a poor kid from a poor family. We didn't have cable at home. So this was early 2000s. Remember in the early 2000s, you could walk into any hotel lobby, and any hotel lobby had cable. Right? Remember those days? You could walk in, you could sit down, you could watch cable. It was awesome. So I was like, hey, would you like to, I didn't even call her babe, I was like, Britannica, would you like to go to the hotel right across the street? Now, I know what you're thinking. There's no rooms. We were pure. Nothing happened there. We went to the hotel lobby. Upon going to the hotel lobby, we came upon a chain link fence. Now, you remember those old chain link fences that had the two pokey prong things at the top of the chain link to keep people from jumping over? So we get to this chain link fence and we see the two pokey prong things up there. I'm like, all right, Britannica, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to jump the fence because there's no way around. So I'm going to jump the fence like a good chivalrous gentleman that I am. And then I'm going to help you over the fence so we can go to the hotel lobby and we can watch TBS together. Okay, that's what's going to happen. So I get over the fence, no problem whatsoever. My wife, she wasn't even my girlfriend, my date at the time, she starts making her way up the chain link fence and getting over. Now she slipped at the top. Remember on the two pokey prong things, she slips, and now she is straddling the chain link on the pokey prong things. And lo and behold, I didn't know this at the time, but she ripped her pants from the back of her knee all the way up. All the way, yeah, you got it, all the way up. Now, I'm a Christian boy. I'm trying to remain pure, trying not to look, but I kind of want to look, but not really looking, but I kind of want to look, right, the whole thing. I take my jacket off, and I had no idea at this point either. My wife my date at the time was bleeding profusely out of her pants. So I grabbed my jacket. She's showing all that God gave her to the world. I got my jacket, wrapping it around my beautiful date at the time, wrap it around her. And I didn't know she's bleeding at the time. We get over to the hotel, sit down, watch our show. We get up from the couch, and there were blood stains all over the couch from the blood on my wife. This was our first date. This was an amazing. I had to work extra hard because I didn't have the moves. I didn't have the right phrase. I didn't have any of that. But when it came time, now we've survived our first date. We're here today, survived. Now when we came time, we dated for 6 years. When it came time to propose, how do you know? I went all out for my wife. I went all out. I think she was away at the time. Were you not? You were traveled back to Indiana. And I had planned this entire night where I knew her family was coming back on a specific date. And I had planned this date for them to come back on a specific January, do you remember the date, 10th? January 10th. It was a full moon. My wife is obsessed with full moons. So I planned it. We go to Lake of the Ozarks. She pulls up, her family pulls up in this van, shoves her out of the van. It's pitch dark. I come running out of a tree, trying to surprise her, end up scaring her. While I sit on this entire balcony with chocolate-covered strawberries. I had candles. I had the whole thing. It's a full moon. It's a clear night. It is beaming on the lake. I had my guitar out because I wrote my baby a song. I sang her the song. I dropped to one knee. I asked my beautiful bride, my fiance, my date, my girlfriend, babe, Britannica Elise Chesser, will you marry me? And she agrees. She says, yes. I went all out from my beautiful now bride. I went all out. Now, how many know? How many know? Now, here's the thing. If I stop pursuing my bride at that moment, how many know we're going to have a problem? We're going to have a problem if I stop. If that's where it ends. If I go to great lengths to pursue my bride, to pursue the girl I want to be with, and I stop at the date or I stop at the proposal, now I got a problem, because we are all built with this innate sense of wanting to be wanted, right? I want to be desired. I know everybody in this room wants to be desired romantically, physically, emotionally, spiritually. You want to be. It is built into the very fiber of our beings. And what we're going to see represented in this story is a man who's going to go to great lengths to pursue the woman that he fell in love with at first sight. We're going to meet a guy named Boaz who goes to great lengths to pursue a woman named Ruth. Now, if you got a Bible, we're going to pick it up in verse number 1. Ruth chapter 2, verse number 1. I'm going to start reading here. It says this. Now Naomi had a relative of her husband's, a worthy man. Come on, would you say a worthy man? Worthy. Single ladies in the room, you find you a worthy man. You don't find you no scrub. You don't find you no joke. You find you a worthy man. Of the clan of Elimelech. Elimelech, remember, that's Naomi's late husband. He died. Well, now there's a worthy man of the clan of Elimelech whose name was Boaz. Come on, say Boaz. Boaz. Let me just make mention before we dive in here. The whole first chapter that we read last week, that happened over the span of 10 years. The family moves, the people die, they get married, they come back. That happens over a 10-year span of time. What we're about to read in chapter 2 happens in one 24-hour period of time. And I find the point to be so powerful that God is deeply interested in the mundane and these seemingly insignificant details of your life. And what we're about to read takes place in one 24-hour period of time, and it's going to set the stage that will have eternal consequences, not only for these people, but for you and I sitting here today. Can I tell you this? That God uses the mundane, intrinsically, seemingly insignificant things that you think are dead-end jobs, that you think are boring, that you think have no value, that you think have no eternal significance. God uses those things to set the platform for providential working of the Almighty God. Boaz. Let me talk about Boaz for a moment here. Boaz, he's a godly man. Boaz is a strong man. Boaz is a protector. Boaz is a pillar in this family. Boaz is a man of godly character. Let me give you the modern translation. Boaz, he had him an 8-pack. He had the V taper, right? The big old broad shoulders. He had the tiny little waist. He had long curly hair. He had a lush flowing beard. I don't know if any of this is true, but it fits the romantic love story that we're about to read today. Boaz, lest you think Boaz is this knight in shining armor showing up on the scene, he's not. Can I give you some free advice as well today? This is not in my notes, but let me give you some free relationship advice, ladies in the room. If you are single, can I just tell you this? That you do not want a knight in shining armor. Okay? A knight in shining armor is a knight who has seen no battle. You want a knight who has some nicks in his armor. You want a knight who's got some damage to his armor, because that is a man who has fought, that is a man who has come out victorious, and that is a man who will fight for you and fight for the things that matter. A knight in shining armor, that's a poser. Right? A knight who's got some damage, that's a guy who has seen battle, who has seen war, and has come out victorious. That's free advice. Take it or leave it, solely my opinion there for all of you single ladies in the room. Can I get an amen? Maybe, I don't even know. Okay, lest we think Boaz is some random guy showing up on the scene. I find this incredibly intriguing to me because Naomi, remember Naomi? She's bitter. She's angry at God. She makes no mention of this guy named Boaz, who she would have known very, very well. She would have known Boaz because he's a wealthy man in the family. He's a guy that would be the person that everybody in the family would go to if there was ever any financial distress. And I find it so intriguing, so powerful that Naomi makes no mention of Boaz whatsoever in her entire dialogue. And it proves a powerful point today that when you walk outside of the will of God, when you find yourself walking outside of your Bethlehem, you are blinded to the blessings of God that are all around you. Boaz is going to come to be this amazing blessing that is going to bless Naomi and bless Ruth. But Naomi can't see Boaz yet. She can't see him for who he is. She can't see him as the redeemer that he will come to be. She can't see him as her protector. She can't see him as her provider. She doesn't see the blessings of God right now because she's blinded. Coming back into the blessing of God, she's not experienced it yet. I find it so intriguing when you and I exit the will of God. When you and I find ourselves walking in disobedience to the place that God has for us. You are blinded to the blessings of God that are all around you, that he wants to use to bless you. Let's keep on reading here, verse number 2. And Ruth, the Moabite, that's another way of saying, and Ruth, the heathen, and Ruth, the vile woman, and Ruth, the pagan, said to Naomi, let me go to the field and glean among the ears of grain to gather leftover grain behind anyone who will let me do it. What's Ruth asking here? She's asking Naomi, listen, there are no men. There's no food. There's no income coming in. Ruth is saying, Naomi, let me go work. Let me go gather some grain for us to eat. She's willing to work. I can imagine the conversation being like, hey, Naomi, listen, there's only one option for people like us. And she's like, people like us? Yeah, poor people. There's only one option. And that's the law says I can go to the field and I can glean some grain for us. That's part of the law. I can go do that. Let me go work. Let me go find some opportunity. Let me go. I know there's not a lot of open doors, but I know there's one open door. And the one open door God's giving me is that field over there to gather some grain. So let me go. Let me gather some grain. Listen, I don't know what you're facing today. I don't know if you're walking in disobedience. I don't know if you're walking outside the will of God. I don't know if you've recently come back into the will of God, but can I ask you this? Are you taking advantage of the grain field in front of you today? Are you taking advantage of the open door God has blessed you with today? You may be in a dire situation. You may be in a situation saying, God, I don't know if you see me. God, I don't know if you're going to come through in my circumstance. But are you taking advantage of the open door God has blessed you with? Would you notice that Ruth, the pagan, coming into a relationship with God, is willing to go out and take that one open door. Take the one open door that God has blessed her with. And what Ruth is going to find out is that God is going to provide for her. God is going to bless her through her working. Can I tell you this? That often God is going to use the things that are seemingly, again, insignificant in your life to provide for you in the midst of your dire situation. The ability to work that dead-end job. The ability to negotiate sales. The ability to make a great deal business-wise. The ability to be in a phenomenal dad or mom. The ability, God has given you these amazing open doors. And what we find is that God often provides in the abilities that he's already given us. Now let me talk about this. Let me talk about this field for a moment. This word field here. Ruth says, let me go to the field. There's some grain out there. Let me go pick some grain just for us to eat. This field that Ruth is going to go glean some grain from. This is the same field that King David would watch his father's sheep. This is the same King David that would go on to be king of Israel. This is the same field that Mary and Joseph would travel to on the night Jesus would be born, and find a stable and find a manger that he would be born. This is the same field that in that field, just north of this field, is a hill country in which the shepherds were keeping watch over their flock at night. This is the same field. Can I tell you this today? If God can orchestrate such amazing, eternal type consequence events on a simple little field, what can he do with your field today? What can he do with the open doors that he's provided for you? What can he do with the opportunities that God has entrusted to you today that are seemingly insignificant? That you say, there's no value in this field. There's no value here for me. I've seen, this is like, there's no end to this job. There is no end to what I'm going through. And what can God do
if he can orchestrate such great events in a simple little field,
What can he do
to what he's doing in your life? Look at what Naomi says. And Naomi said to her, "Go, my daughter." Verse number 3. So Ruth set out and went and gleaned in the field after the reapers. And she just so happened, come on, say happened. She just so happened to come to the part of the field belonging to who? To Boaz. She just so happened to say, "Hey, Naomi, let me go glean in the field." And it just so happened to be the same field that King David would be watching. And it just so happened to be the same field Jesus would be born in. It just so happened to be the field of Boaz, who was of the clan of Elimelech. Listen, when you and I commit our lives to Jesus, what appears to be random happenstance is not random whatsoever. It is the divine and the providential platform upon which God wants to perform his purpose in your life. What just so happens to be a unique random field is the very field in which the Savior of the world would be born. Ruth just so happened to be getting food from Boaz's field. Ruth just so happened to stumble upon this field. Verse number 4. And behold, Boaz came from Bethlehem. That word behold means stop. Exclamation point. It means stop what you're doing. Drop everything. It means look. It means whatever you're doing, stop it and look. And behold, and stop and look. Boaz came from Bethlehem. Listen, in the middle of your destruction today, in the middle of your wandering from the will of God today, in the middle of your looking for the hand and the provision of God today, behold, stop. Your Redeemer comes. Your Redeemer stands waiting to provide. Your Redeemer, your protector, stands waiting to redeem you and redeem the situation and pursue you and bring you back into his will. Stop. Behold. There may be destruction all around. There may be death all around, but stop. Behold, Boaz comes from Bethlehem. Look at what he says. And he says to the reapers, "The Lord be with you." This is a man who carries God with him everywhere he goes. This is a man who the first words out of his mouth are a prayer, a blessing. This is a man who has godly character. Ladies, you find a man who carries God with you in his everyday. You find a man who carries God with you in his every moment, in his every waking second. You find this man. The Lord bless you. And they answered him, "The Lord bless you." Then Boaz said to his young man who was in charge of the reapers, "Whose young woman is this?" Can I just tell you, this is the first biblical, this is that first moment, ladies and gentlemen, that we have. This is on a serious, this is love at first sight. What we're seeing right now. This is the Bible makes no mention of Ruth's beauty. I can only imagine she was a beautiful young woman, but the Bible makes no mention of it. This is love at first sight. She just so happened to be in the field of Boaz. She just so happens Boaz is there that day. Just so happens Boaz came from Bethlehem. And it just so happens in the hundreds of people gleaning in the field, he saw the one girl that caught. It just so happened. Listen, when you commit your life to Jesus, what happens in your life does not happen by accident. It happens by appointment. Does it not? It happens by appointment. Maybe you've recently, look at this, verse 6. And the servant who was in charge of the reapers, he said to Boaz, "She's the young Moabite woman. She's the young pagan. She's the young heathen girl. Boaz, she's the young Moabite woman who came back from Naomi, who came back with Naomi from the country of Moab." I find this disheartening, honestly, like sad. Because, let me just take a moment. Maybe you've recently come back to Jesus. Maybe you've recently come back to maybe you want, like you were in Bethlehem and then you wandered away. You came over to Moab. Maybe you're in Moab today. Maybe you're in that place, that vile, wicked place. Maybe you're in disobedience. You're outside the will of God, but you've come back to Bethlehem. You're back in Bethlehem now. You're trying to experience the blessing of God again in your life. Your past does not define who you are. And all we see here is that people are constantly, this Ruth the Moabite, Ruth the pagan. Listen, there is nothing that can separate you from the love of Jesus Christ. Romans 8:38-39. Nothing can separate you from the love that is in Jesus Christ. When you come back into the blessing, when you come back into Bethlehem, God doesn't see you as a wanderer anymore. He sees you as clothed in the family garments. You are part of the family of God. Ruth is no longer the Moabite. She came back with Naomi. She's given her life to the Lord. She's trying to walk in a life of blessing. She doesn't understand it all, but Naomi's helping her. Boaz is helping her. She's learning all the things. If you've recently come back into a relationship with God, into the place of blessing, your past does not define who you are. The lies that the enemy is trying to tell you do not define who you are anymore. Verse number 7. Ruth said this. So the foreman is telling Boaz. Ruth said, "Please let me glean and gather some sheaves after the reapers." So she came, and she's continued from early morning until now, except for a short rest. And now here's the moment, ladies and gentlemen. Would you just turn your attention here? Because this is the moment. This is the moment you're watching the movie. This is the moment when like the tension has built so much. Like there's a guy, there's a girl. This is the moment Zach locks eyes with Kelly from across the Saved by the Bell classroom. And he's about to walk over and he's about to talk to the woman that he is in love with. This is the beginning of a romantic relationship unlike anything you and I have ever seen before. And before we read this encounter, let me tell you this. That Ruth and Boaz, while this is a romantic story that will end in marriage, Boaz represents Jehovah, who is the great pursuer. And Ruth represents you and I, who were far from God, who were Moabite, pagan, heathen people. This represents far greater than just a romantic story. But look at it here, verse number 8. And Boaz said to Ruth, "Now listen, my daughter, do not go glean in another field. And don't leave," what's he saying? "Don't leave my side, baby girl. Stay where I can see you. Stay where I can protect you. Don't leave this one, but keep close to my young women." Why? Because young women talk to each other. Because he can go to the young women and say, "Hey, what's Ruth saying about me? Hey, what's Ruth doing?" Let your eyes be on the field that they are reaping and go after them. Have I not charged the young men not to touch you? And when you are thirsty, my daughter, go to the vessels and drink, and what the young men have drawn. I love this. I love this because Boaz is the great initiator. Boaz goes to the woman that he loves. He doesn't love her for her beauty. He loves her for her character, because this is a woman who is in the field. This is a woman who he knows the story. We're going to come to find out this is a woman who he says, this is a woman that has character, godly character, who will leave a legacy as a wife and leave a legacy as a mother. Remember, she's been working all day. She's hot. She's probably sweaty. She's probably glistening in the sun. She's probably embarrassed, right? She's probably not wanting to talk to anybody. And yet Boaz, the great pursuer, Boaz seeing the woman that he fell in love with from afar, Boaz goes to Ruth. And I want you to notice this, that Boaz interrupts this conversation with his foreman because he is unashamed to be seen with the young Moabite woman. He is unashamed to be seen talking with the young Moabite woman. This is a divine representation of the Almighty, who comes to you in your need, who comes to you when you are far from God, when you are a young Moabite pagan rejecting God. God comes to you. God pursues you. He looks at you from afar and he says, "I love you. I would do anything for you." He pursues you. He takes the initiative. Would you notice what he says to Ruth? Don't go clean in another field or leave this one. And he says this. What he's saying is, you're safe here. Your needs are met here. I will take care of you here. I will protect you here. I know you've come from afar. I know you've left your family. I know you've left your friends. I know you've left everything, but stay here. Have I not charged my young men not to touch you? This would have been a common occurrence in biblical times, especially in a gleaning grain field. It would have been a very common occurrence for a young woman to be assaulted. It would have been very common, especially if you were a young foreign woman in a foreign country. It would have been very easy for the young men of the field to rape and to assault young women in that field. And yet Boaz says, "You are safe here. You are safe in my field. Your needs are met in my." Are you hungry? You have all the food you need. Are you thirsty? You have living water that will satisfy your very soul. This is a man who is protecting This is a man. This becomes a powerful illustration that God recognizes the fact. Can I tell you this today? God recognizes the fact that when you came into relationship with him, you may have very well left family behind. You may have very well left some friends behind. You may have very well left behind some career. But you may have very well sacrificed some things in your life. And this is the God who recognizes your sacrifice and coming into relationship with him. And he says this, as you come into relationship with me, here's my promise to you. Your needs are met. You're protected here. You are clothed in the family garments. I have your back. There will be nothing, no harm will befall you because I will protect you. This is powerful. This is amazing. As we see Boaz as the great redeemer, as we see Ruth as representative of you and me, this is the God who cares deeply about you. But this is a man who's in love. This is a man who will go to great lengths to show his love for this girl. Verse number 10. Look at what Ruth does. And Ruth fell on her face, bowing to the ground, and said to him, why have I found favor in your eyes that you should take notice of me, since I am a foreigner, since I'm a pagan, since I'm a heathen? Why have I found favor in your eyes? This is unexpected grace. This is the over-the-top kind of grace that, quite frankly, nobody deserves. This is that kind of grace. This is a man who's deeply in love with this woman. This is a man who is going to great lengths to show the woman that he fell in love with that he loves her, that he will protect her, that he will be with her, that he will be the pillar for her, that he will provide for the needs, that he will provide for the wants, that he will take care of this woman. Why have I found favor in your eyes? What? Maybe you're asking that question today. Maybe you're sitting here asking God, why have I found favor in your eyes, dear God? Why have I found favor in your eyes? Some of you today are sitting here with this feeling of inadequacy. Not because you have these feelings of humility, but because you have these feelings of the enemy has lied to you. Now you're believing the lies of inadequacy. And you're asking the question, God, why have I found favor? Why are you pursuing me the way you were pursuing me? Why are you showing me the protection, the pillar that you were showing me? This is amazing grace. This is amazing, unconditional type grace. That all you can see is your inadequacy. That all he sees is your righteousness. All he sees is the clothing of the family garments. All he sees is the best for you. And Ruth's only response is to fall on her face. Let's keep reading. Verse 11. But Boaz answered her. I love this. Boaz unashamed. All that you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband has been fully told to me, and how you left your father, and how you left your native land, and you came to a people that you did not know. In other words, Ruth, everybody told me everything about you. I've seen you from afar. I'm physically attracted to you, but more than that, I'm attracted to your character. I'm attracted to your godliness. I'm attracted to the fact that you will leave a legacy as a powerful wife, and you're going to leave a legacy as a powerful mother. I've heard everything about you, and I honor you. Verse 12, the Lord repay you. Look at what he does. He prays over this woman. Ladies, you find a man who'll pray over you. Not who told you he prayed over you, but who actually prays over you audibly. The Lord bless you. The Lord repay you for what you've done, and full reward be given to you by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge. Verse 13. Then Ruth said, I have found favor in your eyes, my Lord. For you have comforted me and spoken kindly to your servant, though I am not one of your servants. Don't forget, there's a couple things happening here. There's a romantic love story happening here. There is a man who's falling in love with a woman here, but this is a representation of Jehovah, the great pursuer, who is falling in love with you, who will go to great lengths to show you his love, who will go to great lengths to show you his amazing grace. While this is a romantic story that ends in marriage, notice that Boaz, I want you to notice, Boaz is not concerned with her physical beauty. Boaz is obsessed with her character. Boaz is obsessed with her legacy that she will leave as a woman, a pagan woman in a field working. He's obsessed with the godly character that he sees represented in front. He is obsessed. And you say, Pastor, that's all great, that's all awesome, but she's so hot, right? Like, she's so amazing. I can figure all that out later. She's just so hot. Can I remind you, so is hell. I'm just kidding. Oh gosh. Okay, I gotta fly. Let's summarize here. Verse number 14. verse 14, they go on they share a meal together, okay? They're going to share a meal together. There's going to be so much food left over that Ruth is going to have enough food to take home to her mother-in-law. And then in verse 16, Boaz is going to instruct all of the reapers and all of the gleaners. Listen, here's what I want you to do. I want you to leave some of the grain behind in the field. Ruth's going to come by after you're done, and I want you to make it as easy as possible for her. I want you to make it so easy she can gather all the grain she can possibly carry. And I want you to notice in verse 17, let's read it. Then she gleaned in the evening until evening. Then she beat out what she had gleaned, and it was about an ephah of barley. You say, what is an ephah? It's about 40 to 50 pounds of grain. She should have gathered 5, maybe 10 pounds total. She's got 40 to 50 pounds of grain. This is a godly man. This is a man of godly character. This is a man who does godly things. This is a man of godly values. This is a man, because he's a godly man, he does things like God would do. He takes over an abundant care. This is unconditional grace, unconditional love. This is love at first sight. This is the God who cares deeply about you to make sure you have everything you need and everything you want. This is powerful. But let me remind you, none of this happens if Naomi and Ruth stay in Moab. None of this happens if they don't come back to the place of blessing. None of this happens if they don't come back to the place where God can pour out his abundant provision. Naomi, currently, right now, she's angry. Naomi, bitter. Naomi is confused. Naomi is shaking her fist at God. But it doesn't take long for the mercy of God. It doesn't take long for her being back into Bethlehem to understand that the blessing of God is going to be poured out in a way unlike anything she's ever seen. Okay, let me read verses 18 to the end of the chapter, just so we have an idea of the story, and then I'm going to wrap it up. Verse 18. And she took up the grain and went into the city. She goes back to Naomi, back to her mother-in-law, and the mother-in-law, Naomi, saw what she had gleaned. She also brought out and gave her what food she had left over from her day. Now watch this, verse 19. Naomi says, where did you gather all the grain? Ruth, where in the world did you... I know you asked me to go to a random field and pick out some carbohydrates for us to eat, for us to get some energy. Where did you get all this grain? You got 40 to 50 pounds. You should only have like 5 pounds. Where did you work today? May the Lord bless the one who helped you. So Ruth told her mother-in-law about the man in whose field she had worked. And Naomi said, Ruth said, the man I worked with today was named Boaz. May the Lord bless him, Naomi told her daughter-in-law. He is showing his kindness to us as well as to your dead husband. The man is one of our closest relatives, one of our family redeemers. And then Ruth said, what's more, Boaz even told me to come back and stay with his harvesters until the end of the harvest is completed. Good, Naomi exclaimed. Do as he said, my daughter. Stay with his young women right through the whole harvest. You might be harassed in other fields. You might be assaulted, but you'll be safe with him. So Ruth worked alongside the women in Boaz's field and gathered grain with them until the end of the barley harvest. Then she continued working with them through the wheat harvest in early summer. And all the while she lived with her mother-in-law. Listen, God is providentially, constantly, circumstantially working in your life. Amen. Think about it. Naomi leaves Bethlehem, leaves it all behind. She goes into wickedness. She goes into rebellion. She goes in here, and then she comes back into Bethlehem. And now she's understanding the blessing of God. And I would suggest you understanding the blessing of God in a new way, in a brand new way, that she would have never been able to understand otherwise. Because here's the reality. When you walk outside the will of God, when you're walking in disobedience, you are keenly aware of the lack of blessing in your life. But the moment you walk back into the blessing and in the favor of God, you are more keenly aware of the blessings of God that are all around you in your life. Your eyes are more spiritually open to all that God is doing in your life. And what trips so many people up, here's what trips so many people up, is we don't understand how God works. And we have this mindset, until we understand what God is doing, until I understand how God's going to lay it all out for me and explain it all to me, I'm not going to serve God. And with that kind of outlook and with that kind of perspective on life, you will never understand the blessing and the favor of God, who is constantly, providentially working when you don't know it, when you can't see it. It just so happened that Naomi and her husband travel to a random foreign land. It just so happens that one of their sons married a Moabite woman whose name